You can tell that man behind the mask is Rand Paul. A bunch of protesters descending on the Kentucky senator and his wife Kelly as they left the president's RNC speech from the White House. Actually, it was a longer trip than that. He joins us right now for his first live interview since that confrontation. Senator, good morning. That looked scary.
Yeah, my wife and I, it was horrific. We had two women with us who were friends of ours. We had looked out, we came out of the speech
at the White House.
We looked into the street. Our hotel was only right across the street from the White House, but we couldn't go because the mob was already chasing people down that chose to go out that exit. So the Secret Service says, get on a bus and ride to the Trump Hotel.
So leaving the RNC convention speech that was done at the White House by Donald Trump, it was already so dangerous to go across the street because mobs were attacking people using that exit outside of the soft barrier of the White House.
On a bus, it took 45 minutes to get through all the mobs. We get there safely, and then we say we'll get an Uber to go all the way back where we came from, and we wanted to be dropped off at the hotel. But as we got close to it, the streets were blocked and no one would let us through.
The streets were blocked and no one would let us through. Well, he just left Secret Service. He has his own private security detail. Who are the streets being blocked by? And how are they not, quote, letting him through? So I'm assuming the streets are not blocked by the police then, because the police would obviously let Senator Rand Paul through to his hotel room. The question is never answered as to who had blocked off the roads and would not let Senator Rand Paul's motorcade through.
And what happened is there was 2 blocks, and I regret that I made this decision, but I said we're going to walk the 2 blocks. We walked 1 block, but as we walked 1 block, we could see some police in the distance, but we also saw a mob of about 30 people marching and yelling. They all of a sudden saw me right as we got to the policeman, fortunately, or I don't think we'd have survived. We got to the policeman, and the policeman I don't think recognized me, and as they came closer, they were shouting my name, and the crowd doubled to 60, and then it doubled again to 120. And as they were surrounding us, and it got closer and closer, and everybody kept pushing back, the policemen were forming a barricade with their bodies. I whispered to the policeman, they know who I am. You've got to get reinforcements. It's going to get worse. He called for reinforcements, but we didn't get any reinforcements. We waited, but the crowd was getting bigger and bigger and pushing in. They were yelling threats. They were trying to push the police over to get to me. They were grabbing at us. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then finally we decided to make a move. I said, we've got to move. If there's not going to be reinforcements, we have to try to get to the hotel, which was another block. And they were shouting threats, to us, to kill us, to hurt us. But they're also shouting, say her name, Breonna Taylor. And it's like, you couldn't reason with this mob, but I'm actually the author of the Breonna Taylor law to end no-knock raids.
So this is how the ideological subversion works. They're out there. They've been given a target. They've been given a target list. Rand Paul is on that list because he doesn't fall into the leftist category. They see him, scream his name, and he says the crowd doubles and then doubles again. And they come after him, screaming at the man who is trying to stop the no-knock raids that resulted in that woman's death. It makes no sense. That's the mirror world we live in. Those people, they're ideologically subverted. You could not sit them down and explain to them what Rand Paul's doing, trying to get rid of no-knock raids, and they would understand. It could not happen. They will not understand. As Yuri said, they will not understand until the boot is on their neck.
Is lost on these idiots that they're trying to kill the person who's actually trying to get rid of no-knock raids. And they were shouting and screaming and these people were unhinged. But I can't tell you how. I'm not sure we would have made it. So as we're walking sort of surrounded by the police, they're attempting to push the police over to get to me. So at one point they push a policeman backwards. He stumbles and he's trying to catch his balance, and I catch the back of his flak jacket to stabilize him and make sure that he's okay, because he's our defense. I mean, if he's down, the mob's loose on us. And you've seen the pictures of what they do to you. If the police are not there, if you defund the police, if we become Portland, if America becomes Portland, what's going to happen is people are going to be pummeled and kicked in the head and left senseless on the curb. That would have happened to us. I promise you, had we not had the D.C. police to support us, I mean, we are thankful that we have police, and we've got to wake up. We can't have the whole country. We can't have Joe Biden rule the country and have no police. I mean, we can't walk down the street in D.C. safely now. That's how bad it is.
I saw one police officer was actually using his bicycle to try to keep the crowd back. He fell into you. You almost stumbled and fell down. You and your wife are both okay, right?
We are. We were unharmed, but, you know, it's still going on this morning. There's still mobs in the street blocking the streets. And I know it sounds like over the top to say that people are from out of town, but I think we're going to find out that these people are hired and from out of town. Specifically in our case, I believe there are going to be people who were involved with the attack on us that actually were paid to come here, are not from Washington, D.C., and are sort of paid to be anarchists.
So there's Rand Paul coming out with it and saying it. Number one, that the people who were accosting him last night are paid actors from out of state, which opens the door to federal charges.
This is disturbing because really if you're inciting a riot, that's a crime. But if you're paying someone to incite a riot, that person needs to go to jail as well. But we can't live this way. It's getting worse.
And notice there, he made the call. Not only should the person who is inciting the riot be charged, but also the person who is paying for the person who is inciting the riot. And so he just establishes that these people are from out of town, so that opens the door to the feds, and that they're funded by outside sources to come as paid agitators.
You know, I like being free to be able to walk out and go for a walk in the park. We cannot go outside now. It's become so dangerous for us. And I don't hear Joe.
Rand Paul just said, we cannot go outside now. Now, I've got a hard question for my Q people. When Q says they won't be safe walking down the streets, did you think that Q was talking about Rand Paul? Is Rand Paul saying that he's not safe walking down the streets? Is that a placeholder? Because we all have read the posts. And now here's Rand Paul. This is not who I imagined not being safe to walk down the streets.
Biden or Kamala Harris saying one thing about the violence. This mob is their voters. This is the new Democrat Party. And if we don't resist this, the United States is going to become Portland. We're going to become Chicago. All of these failed cities Democrats have run, the president said it in his speech. If we allow them to take over the White House, we are going to become Portland. The country will be on fire. We have to have law and order, and we have to support the police. You know, I can't say that strong enough.
But you said there were threats. Tell us what the threats were.
Well, the threats were to F you up, to kill you. The threats were if they could get hold of you, and I truly believe this with every fiber of my being, had they gotten at us, they would have gotten us to the ground. We might not have been killed. We might just have been injured by being kicked in the head or kicked in the stomach until we were senseless. You've seen the pictures. Most of the networks will not show the pictures of this. This is happening in all of our cities. It's got to stop. And thank God for the police. Had we not gotten to the police, I truly believe that the police saved our life, and we would not be here today, or we'd be in a hospital today had the police not been there. And I'd like to thank them if they're watching this. We thanked them last night, but it was still a melee. They were still trying to get people, away from us. Even in the hotel, people were following us into the hotel.
We heard from Griff Jenkins about a half an hour ago that apparently a number of the businesses in Washington, D.C. are boarded up because they're worried about trouble going forward. Does a prominent Republican like yourself, somebody who is very recognizable, need to have security to simply walk on the streets of Washington, D.C. or major cities in America?
Probably yes, from now on. I don't feel it at home. At home, people are so friendly. I can go to the grocery store, and I want to live, the life of a normal person where I go to the grocery store and buy groceries or stop at the Minute Mart. And at home, I do feel that. But this also isn't normal. There's something going on here. This is like the FBI needs to be involved.
What do you mean
organized
something's going
racket.
on, Senator? What do you mean something
This is an organized interstate racket.
going on? You've got a feeling. Tell us what you think.
My feeling is that there is interstate criminal traffic being paid for across state lines, but you won't know it unless you arrest them. Otherwise, you just think, oh, these are some normal hoodlums from a big city. I promise you that at least some of the members and the people who attacked us were not from D.C. They flew here on a plane. They've all got fresh new clothes, and they were paid to be here. It is a crime to do that, and it needs to be traced. The FBI needs to investigate, but the only way you can do it is you have to arrest people. And usually we say, oh, well, you didn't get hurt, so we're not going to arrest them. They were inciting a riot, and they would have killed us had the police not been there. They all need to be arrested, and I'm not saying forever, but they need to be arrested, questioned. They need to say, where are you staying? And the bills need to be subpoenaed by a judge to say, who paid for your bill? How did you get here on a plane and staying in a fancy hotel, and yet you're acting like a criminal? Something's going on here, and it's much bigger than people think. But the bottom line is we can't let the United States become Portland.
So he's making a gigantic accusation there. He's saying that some of the rioters that attacked him and his wife were staying in the upscale hotels in the better part of Washington, D.C. He's saying that they have been financed. And he's also pointing out a problem with identifying these people, and that is, unless you make blanket arrests, you're never going to know who the people in the group are from outside of the state. You maybe arrest 20 and one of them is from outside of the state. That person you look at to be a paid agitator. But if you're not making arrests, or if you're only making local arrests, then you're not going to be able to find out that information, because you best believe it's not the majority of them that are outside of the state subversive agents. The majority of them are from local areas, but what happens is they have people who are coordinating these events, and those people are there in the numbers of maybe less than 10, and they have to be picked up in a dragnet of arrests during the riots. And again, I have to say this, I'm not talking about peaceful protests. I'm talking about the kind of targeted rioting that's being done here by subversive agents that you can look. I hate to beat a dead horse, but the Transition Integrity Project, the war game that John Podesta did, where they got together and they war gamed out the time period from the election to the inauguration, and all four scenarios they war gamed out, and they did not concede the election. Now, Hillary Clinton said that he shouldn't concede the election publicly, and all of this is being done in the lead up to, as preparation for. And inside that tip report, Transition Integrity Project, they also talk about how they are going to be guaranteed agitators on the streets. There's going to be both sides is what they're planning on. And the Democrat side of the war game paid what they call it, influencers. They hired influencers to lead these rallies, and of course they call them peaceful protests, but they do acknowledge in the tip report that these are going to end up as riots. And they even go so far as to say that the Trump supporters would have every reason in the world to subvert their peaceful protests and make them look violent. So if their protests turn into riots, they have the excuse there in the tip report that there are subversive Trump supporters that are actually causing this. And there are subversive agents involved in this, best believe it, but they're not Trump supporters. That I can guarantee you.
And that's what my fear is, that the United States is going to be on fire if we have no police. And look, I've been for reform. I've authored 22 criminal justice reforms. They were yelling at me, we're not going to let you go alive unless you'll say out loud you're for criminal justice reform. And I'm like, you idiot. You are so dense that you have no idea that I've been a leading advocate for criminal justice reform with President Obama, with President Trump, and you're going to try to kill me, and I've been trying to help the problems. And so this is what's sad, but it's such lawlessness. If we have this kind of lawlessness, I would say people are going to get killed. People have been killed. You know, the former police chief, his story was so sorrowful to listen to his wife last night that was killed in St. Louis. Yeah. You know, the little girl, Sequoia Turner, 8 years old, was shot in the middle of the day in Atlanta because they took a wrong turn. But the police, they had let the mob take over a street corner armed. We can't let our cities be taken over by these marauders and thugs.
I tend to agree with Rand Paul that we can't just let mobs take over entire blocks in our cities. This is the surveillance video released by the Atlanta Police Department in the person wanted in that young girl's murder. It seems as though in the cities where they allow this to happen, chaos and violence ensues. And I have a hard time believing that this is not premeditated. And I'm glad that Rand Paul is speaking out about it, because it is an insidious type of subversion, because it causes other people to act out. As people get plugged into this media matrix and they are fed a narrative, whether it be true or not, it's usually a false matrix narrative. They sometimes then go out into actual reality and act out the things that they've been programmed that they've seen on their screens. And this next article is an example of that. They create the false narrative, people get plugged into it, and then they go out into reality and they act it out, and they actually create the false narrative that they were fed. Suspect wanted in AutoZone knife attack. Columbus police are looking for the person responsible for attacking an AutoZone employee with a knife Tuesday morning. The incident happened at the AutoZone located on 32nd Street at around 8:26 a.m. According to police, the suspect entered the store and attacked the employee with a knife in an unprovoked incident. The suspect is described by police as a slender black man with short hair, possibly having a goatee. He is wearing a dark gray shirt and dark pants, along with a pair of slides. The robbery/assault division of the Columbus Police Department is asking for assistance of the public, especially in that area, to assist in the identification of the suspect. Just your everyday run-of-the-mill AutoZone. Here's your suspects. And then let's look at the update to the story. Posted August 27. Columbus, Georgia. The suspect in the August 25 AutoZone stabbing on 32nd Street made his first appearance in court. Javon Hatchett, 19, is charged with aggravated assault and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. Hatchett faces these charges for a stabbing he allegedly committed on August 25th around 8:36 a.m. at the AutoZone. Police said he stabbed a store employee in an unprovoked attack. Columbus Police Sergeant R.S. Mills gave testimony in court about the case. Mills told the court that when he asked Hatchett why he stabbed the AutoZone employee, Hatchett said he, quote, felt the need to find a white male to kill, close quote, after watching videos of police brutality happening across the country. Isn't it interesting that felt the need to find a white male to kill is in quotes, but after watching videos of police brutality happening across the country is not in quotes? Is that just the writer's assumption? Hatchett is being held without bond at the Muskogee County Jail until his case goes to Superior Court.
Police say a stabbing suspect targeted a Columbus store worker because of his race. Authorities arrested 19-year-old Javon Hatchett for what they say was an unprovoked attack against a worker at AutoZone. Police Sergeant R.S. Mills testified that Hatchett admitted to stabbing the employee. Mills says Hatchett told him he did because he, quote, felt the need to find a white male to kill. Mills testified Hatchett said he wanted to kill a white man because of police brutality against African Americans. Hatchett is being held in jail without bond.
And so you see the product of the chaos that they've brought ends up being a personification of that chaos. It's a self-feeding cycle. This is why when Yuri says his students often say, hey, but was that subversive thing there a result of USSR subversion? And he says, I don't know. Because he can't say, because they plant the seeds and then it almost runs itself. At this point, what's happening in our country is almost on autopilot. They've done it to so many different countries throughout the entire world. Those of us who had watched the United States do this to countries in the Middle East and South America for a very long time, we were wrong when we thought that they would never do that to this country. Because that's what's happened and that's what's happening. And we know when we get to this stage what comes next. It's right out of the playbook. And again, I'll say it again and I'll say it a million times. People have got to look at that tip report, the Transition Integrity Project, because they war-gamed this out. I guarantee you the outcome is going to go right down one of the ways that they say, just like Event 201 was a war game for the CV. Anyways, guys, like, share, sub the channel. Facebook is no longer letting me advertise. They deleted my channel off of Facebook, and they deleted my advertiser account, so that's not going to help the channel growth very much. So I'm also on warning. I think it's very funny about YouTube censorship because they removed 3 of my videos thus far, but separated by months each time. They take a video, there's been a couple of ones, the one I made about the Elmhurst Hospital at the beginning of the CV, the one about the doctors, and then another one about a doctor. They keep me on warning, just so that at any moment they could, if they pull the next video, then that's a strike. And I don't even know what happens yet because I'm such a small channel. But it's interesting the way that they try to lightly nudge your opinions. It's like, you're allowed to say what you want, but if you can't say that, or you're going to get a warning. And it's very interesting. It's a very subtle type of manipulation. But anyways, guys, so yeah, I can't advertise on Facebook anymore until that gets worked out, if it gets worked out. And yeah, so try to share if you can. Thanks for everything you do, guys. I'll talk to y'all soon.